Nice to see you again.
Dave, hello.
We're back.
Grab
once
a
more,
chair.
with gloves on this time.
Yes, that's indicative of the fact that we're going to have a bit of a trolley dash, supermarket sweep type situation. I don't know if people may have seen, we did something similar with Ian McCollum around about a year ago now. And we thought you'd be the ideal candidate for another go at something similar.
I'll give it a bash.
But what we're going to go for, as people have probably guessed by now, is, I guess I'm going to use the word iconic, that horrifically overused word,
by
iconic,
us.
which I hate, but I'm going to say it anyway. So we're going to go with the same kind of thing, like a loadout. So primary, sidearm, and then a secondary weapon with a bit of leeway.
Okay.
Yeah, what you'd have on your back or your black hole pocket.
Okay. I can picture it.
But clearly with a video game mindset.
Okay.
So what you feel is, well, I guess it can be your personal preference, or it can be what you think everyone else should think.
Okay, I'm starting to build a picture in my mind, I think.
Okay,
I'm in my mind palace.
I mean, obviously, we have, as I've been doing for a number of years with you, we have an almost unlimited pool of stuff to draw from, but where that meets the video game world, obviously you're not going to get necessarily one-to-one parallels for everything you might be thinking of. So, but you can justify that to the audience, or you can go for something that's a fantastic representation of something that is iconic to video games. We don't want to be too prescriptive.
I think I could do that.
Good. Excellent.
All right.
Shall we?
Let's do it. Try not to look what you've brought back. Waiting for a surprise. Ah, well, this is interesting.
I've cheated. I have cheated. This is actually not a PPK.
Oh.
But I think the intent is clear from the gold-platedness of it.
Yes. The gold-plated element is very pop culture video game.
And if I hold it, it looks more like a PPK. I did double cheat though, and grabbed an actual PPK as well. So
as is your right.
Yeah, hopefully. Which is instructive actually in how much even smaller the PPK is. Like the grip is, I guess, with the base plate on there, it's actually much the same height, but the overall length is less. Anyway, I'm going GoldenEye.
I thought you might.
I'll be honest, I wanted to go Fallout and grab the Chinese pistol version of the C96, but we don't have the variant with the extended fixed magazine that the Type 17, is it? In Fallout 3?
Yeah, that was just called Chinese pistol in Fallout
but then I picked something that is not right anyway, so, you know.
And gold. So where did you start? Did you start with, I want a PPK because of GoldenEye, or you want a golden gun because that's a video game thing?
Just GoldenEye. And then when I went to the draw, and I was just going to get this, I thought, even though it's not the right variant, it just looks right. And you know, many hours seared into my brain of playing with both versions, obviously, in the game.
Well, there is another James Bond game in development currently, which we're hopefully going to see more of fairly soon.
Okay, interesting. So it won't be GoldenEye though, will it?
No, but it is being made by IO, which are the Hitman games.
Okay.
So if you can picture a Hitman-esque Bond game,
I definitely can.
There's no way that can be bad.
It's hard to see how it would be.
Like, I'm very excited about that. So I'm glad you went with Bond
I was trying to think of relatively early video game experiences and what sort of made an impression on me, and there are various options, but a lot of them is stuff like the Jagged Alliance games or like SEAL Team, where you can barely see what the guns are in those games, and they're maybe not the best representations actually. So I thought, let's go a few years later, and probably what I played the most hours of cumulatively, probably, and just okay, it's riffing very much on movie guns, and I guess that's why I wanted to grab the golden one, because obviously the golden gun in the movies is a different thing.
Yeah.
And the game kind of smashed them together to create the gold PPK.
Well, if I think of the PPK,
PP in this case,
I think of James Bond and by extension GoldenEye. If I think of any gold-plated gun, I think of video games.
this is the
So
thing.
it makes
I think
sense
you
to
need
me.
both. So I totally cheated.
I've actually cheated as well.
Okay, go on.
So let's see if you can spot the parallel or the connective tissue between
Oh,
an engraved Colt single-action army and a Makarov.
that's quite funny. We both cheated on double guns.
What game inspired this?
Oh, I'm struggling with that.
So this is because I've been thinking about Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater recently.
An ocelot never lets his prey escape.
Sokolov was being guarded by the KGB and hunted by GRU. Snake, it sounds like this could be even hotter than Cuba.
Don't forget, I'm the world's worst gamer because I've never played a Metal Gear game.
I think you would genuinely really love Snake Eater because there's a lot of gun nerdery in that. But there's a couple of
I've
reasons
seen
why.
enough from what we've done and what people keep showing me. It's just one of those things that it passed me by. I'm sorry, everyone.
I've grabbed these for there's levels to this. So it's a great game, great guns in that game, very gun nerd. It's also getting a remake soon, so I'm harkening forward as well.
Okay, all right.
But the character Revolver Ocelot starts when you're introduced to this character. He starts with Makarov.
See, funnily enough, if you just brought this in, I probably would have guessed.
So you're gonna get some Revolver
'Cause
Ocelot
I know
lore.
that much, but I didn't know about this.
So when you first meet the character, this is what he's wielding, and he's doing a lot of sort of fancy tricks.
If you're not the boss,
And it causes the gun to jam.
Okay.
And Snake comments, those are.
that's more of a revolver technique.
So he disarms him because his Makarov jammed, and then the next time you meet him, he's got a Colt single-action army.
Right.
And there's the iconic line in the Metal Gear series that say, "Engravings give no tactical advantage whatsoever."
Yes, you see, that I'm aware of.
So that's also
as well
why
as the single action army thing.
I got the engraved one as
Yeah.
well. But there's the Metal Gear Solid reference or connection. But also, as the years have gone by and games have, featured a wider variety of firearms, the Makarov to me has become the quintessential Russian-Soviet pistol for games.
Yep.
I remember using the Grach or the Grach.
Grak, I think.
I remember using the Grach in things like Battlefield 3, and that was one of my favorite pistols in that game. But so many games, this has almost become, at least in pop culture perception, as it's like the Russian 1911. Obviously, completely different, caliber. But in terms of,
I know people in the comments are saying the Tokarev is the Russian 1911.
well, in terms of like speaking to the character,
I know what you mean.
and its place in
Yes.
games and it's in video games loadout, it's as common,
Yeah.
I guess you would
Yeah,
say.
in terms
as
of
the
status, I agree.
Yeah. So like, Escape from Tarkov, Stalker, even in the sort of Black Ops era of Call of Duties, there's always a Makarov or something very similar.
Yep.
But like this aesthetic and shape, I think has become a video game touchstone now.
Yep.
For people to just sort of look at a general shape like this of a pistol and go, that is Russian Soviet.
Dare we say inspired, but well, actually probably more the PP.
Well, that's why it was interesting that you
That's
grabbed
weird synergy, isn't it?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
as far as I know, that is a lift from this design.
this sticks out. But again, like even if I talk about video game revolvers, this is one that sticks out to me, especially. You know, it's not just the revolver Ocelot connection. Like this
What was
is
he called before he had a revolver? Just
Ocelot.
Ocelot. Okay.
I don't know if that's his biblical name or if it's on his birth certificate. The Metal Gear Solid lore is as confusing as it is deep, and I can't claim to be really clued up on all of it.
So there isn't a self-loading pistol Badger out there?
That could be you.
Oh, okay.
That could be your
Yeah.
title. Magazine-fed marmoset. Like this is the Red Dead Redemption Cattleman as well.
Yes.
So there's tons of games out there, pop culture, movies, video games, TV shows, that this is the quintessential revolver, at least all
Yep.
the way up until, you know, double action starts to become more common. But from, you know, the era of Red Dead all the way up to Cold War revolver Ocelot, this has like a bizarre sort of half-life that continues even into the modern era. Then you look at games like Destiny, where it's very sci-fi, but they're still using the single action. And as soon as, especially when it's as ostentatious or as beautifully engraved as this, you see a video game over-the-top revolver with a single action, I think single action army all the time.
Yeah, it's got a weird kind of tail to it, this thing, considering how, like, in theory, it should have been obsolete by the end of the century, you know, 19th century. And it just wasn't, and it carried on. Partly sustained by nostalgia and cowboy movies and all of that. But, you know, a few law enforcement guys did carry on carrying these things well past when you'd think they would have stopped. And then you reminded me, unfortunately, of the Expendables sequel, where Stallone ends up packing a single-action army as well. And anyone that wants to sort of reference that someone is so skilled that they can make this as effective as a modern gun, I think is the logic there.
Yeah, that's
Probably for Metal Gear as well.
That's the energy that especially a single action revolver carries. Like it's one of those guns that says something about the character, that they are, you know,
Crazy.
crazy usually, yeah, or been trying to do strange tricks and spin them on their fingers, which
Yeah.
obviously we won't try and do. But
I mean, I'd extend that to Bond, by the way. I mean, the P99 was a great move, and then to go back to this thing is bonkers, frankly. Probably more bonkers than the setting of Metal Gear Solid.
well, I don't know about that. You've not played Metal Gear Solid. You play Metal Gear Solid and then you try and compare it to the bonkers of Bond. You'll be
Fair enough.
it won't work. But no, as you know, you're not going to use those akimbo, are you? There's not a lot common there, but they both have a very interesting video game life, and the character that combines them is Revolver Ocelot.
And there's another weird Bond connection here, at least in my fevered imagination, which is that you've got a main character who is turning in one gun because someone criticizes it and going with another gun. Well, that's what happens with the Beretta and the PPK.
With a gun that's arguably worse as well, or less effective for their scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the PPK for Bond was definitely an improvement. That is really not. Although the 45 long Colt round is a more potent round than the Makarov round. But you're getting a couple less, and it's just big and bulky and heavy, and yeah. So, but yeah, weird again, bit of synergy there that you have. There's a famous scene in the Bond movies, which is in the books as well. And this idea that you don't want to be carrying that, and then you end up carrying something else, and the same happens there.
Yeah.
Weird coincidence.
I'm curious as to what you've got. I feel like we've either got something very similar or they couldn't be more different.
Let's find out. So this is the secondary category. So second weapon, second long gun slot is how I've interpreted that.
Yeah, I'm envisioning like a Daisy inventory or something.
Yeah. Well.
So different.
Okay.
Very.
Right.
Different.
Funnily enough, I saw that the drawer that this was in, I saw was open. So I thought, are we missing one of these? And we've gone for the same thing, but we haven't. So do you want to go first?
To me, the Chris Vector has such an incredible pop culture video game life, more so than even its place in the real world. To me, this has become... We've discussed before how the P90 was like the video game gun. I think this has overtaken it in terms of that status. It's, like I said, it's life in video games has propelled beyond its life in reality. It's
Even more so, because actually the P90 is weirdly popular. If you look at the list,
yeah.
can't vouch for all of it, but the user list on Wikipedia is surprisingly long for the P90.
But the Chris, like it's crazy how much video games latch onto this. I think its functionality has helped it get a massive life in video games, i.e. controllable, super high rate of fire. But the thing is not a lot of games actually portray that to a high degree.
It's hard to do, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's the system works so well, it sort of ruins video game balance. So it sits in a very odd place in a video game loadout. I remember, it's not the first game it appeared in, but Modern Warfare 2, it wasn't the most popular SMG. I think the UMP-45 was probably more popular in that game. But it was the first big game that shone a spotlight on this weapon. And from there, it just got more and more popular. It's, especially in games like Call of Duty, where the arenas are pretty close quarters.
Yep.
And the high rate of fire, that's the statistic that dominates those sort of close quarters battles in video games. But even the shape of it, like this shape, especially here, has been used by so many virtual weapon designs now, from realistic depictions to weapons like the guns of Titanfall or Apex Legends. Even Rainbow Six Siege made was it a 7.62 version? That was the reaction you made when I showed it to you.
I'd forgotten all about it. I blanked that from my memory. Oh, wait, yes. It's coming back to me, and I wish it wasn't.
But then you have games like Escape from Tarkov that make it really realistic, really high fidelity, even features the logo. And Insurgency Sandstorm actually virtually implements the recoil system.
Okay.
So it's super controllable in that game, more so than I think an SMG with the rest of the sort of statistics should be.
Yeah.
But they've actually gone through the effort of being like, yeah, we want it to feel like a Chris Vector. We want to implement some of the controllability that it's now famous for. But I almost feel like the silhouette of it is even more key to it, because it looks modern, it looks sci-fi.
It must be the most cyberpunk of real guns.
Yeah.
Surely.
Like that shape alone says SMG to me, I just think of so many video game SMGs, like the Fortnite SMG just has this, one of them has this general shape. So it's also been adopted by arcade games, casual games, realistic games, games that are, have fictional weapons but want this shape to, because this shape, I do feel, because of the how common it became for so many years, people see this shape and think high rate of fire, controllable, SMG. So it's not even just the name has become popular. That silhouette has helped, I think, propel increase how much user recognition there is just to that shape. But it's also a really cool, fascinating gun. But like I said, its place in pop culture, I think, has just propelled cultural awareness of it so much, which is a whole interesting thing of itself.
Well, it's one of the most, well, maybe not the most, but in terms of the old adage of form follows function. I mean, you can argue whether it's necessary to have this diving bolt mechanism to control recoil or not, but the form literally follows that function. The reason it has this distinctive silhouette is because we've moved a lot of the gubbins from back here down into the front in here, meaning that this bit can be really slim, and I guess it's doing what, I've been a bit unkind to some game guns where, I'm looking, well, that couldn't work because this couldn't come back here and that couldn't pop out there, and what's this wibbly bit here? This is the closest thing in a real gun you get to something that's striking, like, whoa, how does that work and why, And then the guns that riff on the design, well, they're not necessarily bringing the function over with them. And as you say, even the Chris Vector itself in games isn't always as controllable as by rights it probably should be. The thing that's really missing for me, I think, on the versions that I've actually had hands on, when I fired this for real, like over a decade ago now, we will get round to firing ours at some point. I think it helps automatic if you don't have much experience with automatic. It does nothing really on semi, because how could it? Not really. I guess it might help you learn to shoot rapid strings of fire. Where it really shines is on that 2-round burst setting. And that's just like, boom, 2 shots on target without you having to learn to control it. Or at least that was my experience of it. So it's like the looks of it override the form overrides the function, I think, in terms of why it's got such traction.
Yeah, which it's funny that the burst feature I don't think is implemented that much in games. Games don't really, I don't like burst fire in games anyway. But even the name, like, I've seen comments in, when we've featured this weapon before, or even when it's popped up in like a game's trailer, people will call it like, oh, the Fennec 45, because it was more popular in like the Modern Warfare remakes than it was in reality. So
maybe
the fake
Chris
name,
should rename it.
But I can't think of many other guns that the fake name overtook the popularity of the real name.
Well, the closest you come is probably something like the Clob. But the people who reference the name know what the real thing is called and will call it that first, I think.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's made such a splash as a fake gun that it's almost eclipsing. Or more people know about it as a fake gun than they do as a real gun. Put it that way.
Yeah. But obviously very
Interesting
different.
choice.
Very different from what you've grabbed.
Well, it fits the bracket. You have the folding stock of different designs. It is very compact. I think of this as a modern day Tommy gun for, well, same caliber, same kind of rate of fire, same kind of purpose, really. So as a secondary, it fits. I just could not help but think Doom 2.
Specifically Doom 2.
Specifically Doom 2, but obviously that you spiral down the rabbit hole of iconic firearms generally, and Doom 2 wasn't created in a vacuum. Obviously it's drawing on depictions of double barrel side-by-side shotguns, but it's become the iconic one for me. This is even roughly the right configuration. The little icon from the game shows a stock, and actually that makes the thing far more effective. Even if it's probably firing down here without even a hand visible. Yeah, one-handed from the sternum.
That's a recipe for heartburn or something.
And that reload, the click, clock, clock of the reload is just seared into my brain. I won't attempt it. We have snap caps in here, and the fist of shoving in the 2 rounds, closing it up. There's just so many iconic memories of iconic. Stop saying iconic.
Well, yeah, like I said, there's so many games where a double barrel shotgun is, the answer to a room full of enemies, especially
but that's the thing, isn't it?
Zombies and demons.
Yeah, room full of enemies. It's the first time I remember being aware of bullet impacts in a game that were visible. The little dunk and a little bit of smoke. And obviously with the super shotgun, it's a wall full of little dunks and smokes. And you got that insane spread. And it's the template for shotguns in general, and especially double-barreled ones. The spread is far too wide. The damage is far too high.
I don't know if the numbers...
But it's just so cool.
It is undeniably cool. I don't know if the numbers support this, but I feel in more recent years, because this is, the iconic double-barreled shotgun, and it's so common through games, a lot of games have started to feature over-unders more. Or if not, have been trying to use over-unders
to differentiate
for a little variety while also fitting in the same
COD did,
space.
didn't it?
COD had some over-unders. Even the most recent Stalker game has a double-barreled side-by-side and an over-under. I think the double barrel is just called the boomstick, and it's sawed off, and the over-under is full length.
Another iconic double-barrel shotgun.
So I think that's another way that video games are trying to feature double-barrel shotguns, and also giving them their own diverse life. Long over-unders, short side-by-sides. But I've definitely seen more over-unders over the past few years in games. perhaps because they just want that extra visual variety.
It might be distancing themselves. It might be because in the real world, over and under has become much more popular than side by side. Because in terms of aligning, the two shots differing as little as possible when you pull those two triggers, sometimes one, usually two triggers, or maybe just fashion or both. The over-under configuration has become more popular in the sporting world. So if it's a weapon you find kind of environmentally, farmers' mums again, then you're less likely to find a side by side. And obviously the one I've chosen, the game I've chosen, as it were, is my inspiration for this. It almost makes very little sense, really. I suspect. So the pump action in the Doom games is almost certainly a reference to Hicks's shotgun in Aliens. Yeah, and that's meant to be an antique, although it shows up in all the games, but meant to be like an idiosyncratic personal choice that ends up paying off for him. And I feel like, well, Doom 2, we have to go one better. We have to have and they turn this kind of mundane, kind of farming, utility, sporting tool into this absolutely devastating close quarters sci-fi weapon. So it's kind of incongruous, but it feels so right.
I think we've talked about shotguns in the past as well. Having only two shots ups the tension.
Yes.
Especially if it's in a horror game. Like I think in DayZ you can find
really only one shot in Doom 2.
Yeah, because both barrels at once. In DayZ, it's a zombie apocalypse, and you can actually find double barrel shotguns and saw the barrel off yourself if you find a hacksaw. And there's that scene in one of the Wolfenstein games when the zombies or the undead are falling from the sky. You've just found a double barrel. You're halfway through sawing. You see an enemy fall, and you're like, "Sorry, faster!" As like a panicked moment. But I think that's another thing that helps it sit well in terms of the video game spectrum of shotguns. It's like more power.
Yep.
But if you miss those two shots, you're done.
Yeah, it's kind of emblematic of how you incorporate a gun into a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Super high damage, low capacity, and then that fall off, that ludicrous fall off over distance.
Whereas usually this is super low damage and high capacity, high rate of fire.
Yep.
We've done it again.
Although I think, as much as we say that this is more of a virtual gun in a way than a real one, you're clearly going to want this, aren't you?
Yeah.
Out of the two.
I would.
So although I didn't pick this, I'm glad you did, because it's come out of our working relationship, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's something that's... It's not something I expected to happen through my career, but it's very cool that, the work that we did together led to the collection growing at least a tiny bit. So at the very least, our working relationship, we remembered by a vector.
Two vectors.
Two vectors. You were greedy.
We've
sitting
bought
sitting in
two.
the collection.
Facilitated by your good self.
Yeah, it was a very cool couple of emails to send, but that's sort of all I did. I think we were just talking about the vector so often in those videos, and every time you're like, wish I had a vector, wish I had a vector. And my logic was, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, well, getting through to the right person is really at least half the battle in acquiring anything up to date like that. So we do appreciate it, and maybe we'll put a little commemorative tag on one of them.
Please do, yes.
Hi Royal Armouries fans, Dave here. In this video, I mention a project that I was working on a few times, and I couldn't really talk about it back then, but now I can. It's called EXP, and it's a brand new independent channel creating expert-driven breakdowns and Reacts-flavoured content around history and pop culture. And it will of course be featuring your friend and mine, Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history every single week. We're also launching the EXP Patreon to support the project, the channel, and the content we all love making. And membership comes with a ton of perks like early access to videos, extended episodes, podcasts, Discord access, and much more. You can head over to patreon.com/watchexp from February the 14th, or come find us on YouTube to learn more. We hope to see you over there, and now, back to Jonathan.
Sidling in with my attempting to keep my choice secret.
Yeah, I've got to shield this because mine's quite large.
Right. Who's going first?
You can go first because
I think I'll have to logistically, won't I? Because
Yeah.
it's on my lap. And it is this.
I had a feeling an MP5 would pop up today.
Yeah, well, if you're going to pop up an MP5 and you're talking about games,
The
it's
Half-Life MP5
probably this
specifically.
one. Yeah, I think it was in the course of filming with you guys that I realised the other MP5 grenade launcher is even more like the one from Half-Life, which is where this is coming from. I mean, ours is pretty close, but there's one that's essentially an adaptation of the M203 onto the MP5. So it's even more Half-Life-y than this one. But I don't care, because this is the one that I saw up on the wall 15 odd years ago. And went, oh my God, it's the Half-Life gun. So for me, this is still the Half-Life gun. And then after we filmed with it, I forget which time, because it's cropped up more than once, hasn't it? A friend of the Armories, thank you, Jip, identified some different handles
Oh.
for this. So it's still not quite right, because the one in the game is that weird kind of MP5 SD looking grip.
Yeah, it's got like
Thing.
ribbed handguard.
Well, this is closer. So one of several designs, this was Istech, came up with this design, British company, and allegedly even trialled by UKSF. But so the one it came with was this, and then he sent us a couple of different options, and that version I think makes it look a bit more Half-Life-y. So, and there's just that crazy idea of a 9mm submachine gun with a grenade launcher on it, and you go, that's ridiculous, and you find out that someone did it for real.
Yeah, I had no idea it was a real thing before, you know, working with you. I just took it for granted, it being in Half-Life. It's like it's a fictional game. Like you say, a 9mm SMG with a grenade attachment. It's like how do you jump to there?
Yeah.
Obviously, there was some real-world consideration as to why they would feature that, and in game, you blast away a chunk of head crabs and then shoot some Vortigaunts or something. Like it works in the game.
I mean, the game, it's giving you, it kind of makes sense, and I guess this is sort of what they were going for with the real thing as well, is that you have an inherently short-ranged primary weapon, and then the ability to, I mean, I guess it's not reaching out any further than the bullets can effectively
The
shoot.
drop in Half-Life is bloop.
And the drop is very short in Half-Life, so I'm kind of reconsidering my thought there. But it gives you the, it's the other half of the destructive package, as it were, in that this is relatively low power but high rate of fire, and this is, well, obviously even lower rate of fire effectively, but extremely destructive. And it's kind of what they were going for. You know, it was something that they could punt out to distance and have an area effect that you could never dream of having with a submachine gun. Very, very niche, which is why it didn't actually catch on.
I have to imagine they must have been, if they weren't aware of a grenade launcher attached to an MP5 while thinking up the weapons of that game, that's a hell of a coincidence.
Because End of Days was the only other one I'd ever seen, and that was 1999. So Half-Life was done in the can, on shelves, in your computer by 1998. So it's not inspired by a movie that I'm aware of. Were they flicking through catalogues, early catalogues for a grenade launcher on MP5? I don't know. I think they came up with it originally. I'd love to know the answer, if anybody does know.
Well, I've not gone for short range. I've gone for long range.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of not surprised to see this.
funnily enough, another Walther. That wasn't on purpose.
Yeah, not this, by the way. We're thinking of the pistol from earlier.
But this is very much a video game sniper rifle to me. You think of, I mean, the first thing you think of is Hitman, his suitcase sniper rifle. You know, it has appeared in Bond. It's appeared in the Modern Warfare series.
This one was on the set of The Living Daylights.
Oh, really? So it's got some Bond legacy.
This was loaned out to the
Really?
production of The Living Daylights.
Can you give me a hand in dropping the bipod?
Yep. Very sadly, when I went looking for serial numbers on camera, it wasn't this one that was shown on camera. They must have used this as the backup option in case the other one went down. Move my MP5 out of the way. There you go. But yes, this has a little bit of film heritage to it.
But I think
Specific one.
it's got very spy heritage as well, I think, both because of Bond and what I think about Hitman. It's very Gucci, I think we would say.
It looks like a hitman's weapon, doesn't it? Even
Yeah.
though it was absolutely not conceived. If anything, it was conceived as like the opposite of that, as a counter-terror weapon.
Yeah.
Um,
But I see this and I imagine that shot of Agent 47 like cradled in like on crisscross applesauce sort of on his sat on his bum, sniping that way with it cradled in his arms. Like that's such a cool shot and it works so well for the aesthetic of Agent 47. It's got like hints of Cold War through it. I remember I think it's the Modern Warfare 2 version, or was it the Call of Duty 4 version? There's one where the scope, its cap has a little smiley face on it, which is like
I vaguely remember
a
that.
silly sticker on such like a rare, expensive, you know,
very serious, very German
serious weapon.
Yeah.
Is like as you learn more about the weapon, the seriousness of it, and it's, you know, where it came from, having like a silly sticker like that just makes me sort of smile and wince at the same time. But I've in the sort of plethora of video game sniper rifles, this is always up there for me. I always think of it as suppressed though, but it's not.
It kind of looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now that we have the era of very compact suppressors,
And I think some games have seen that and assumed it's suppressed.
or maybe put a longer one on. Yeah, I mean, this is not, by the way. This is effectively a sophisticated flash suppressor. But yeah, with technology that's moved on since, you could have some suppression effect with a can that small, but that's not what it is.
One of the coolest sniper rifles in history, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's a crowd pleaser, regardless of media or,
Yeah.
or not media. You know, people are. It's one of those unicorn guns that people would love to have. They're not that common and they're extremely expensive. The aesthetics of it, it's very purposeful. It looks very sort of space age, and yet has the wooden furniture. I think that's one of the main things that grabs people's attention. Bullpups are always intriguing, I think, to a lot of people anyway. But then this, you know, very blocky machined metal receiver married to traditional wood is just kind of striking and stops you and makes you think.
And I think that's why unicorn guns are really cool to feature in games and pop culture, because it allows you to sort of get a feel for them or familiarize yourself with them, or just gives those guns exposure in a way that they just couldn't get otherwise. And I get like sort of like the Vector, so many more people I think are aware of the WA-2000 because of its place in pop culture than because of just history or general historical awareness of firearms.
There's probably people out there who like this thing who don't even know that's a real gun, but still think of it quite fondly because they played with it.
Yeah. Well, no, that's again, just it looks so gorgeous. It's very square, but I've never seen a better looking square.
Maybe that helps though. Like with some of the earlier apperances, it's going to be easier
That's a good
model the
point.
thing.
Yeah, that's a very quick modeling job. Just 4 corners. Okay, so this one is player's choice, I guess. Just a gun that says video game to you.
Yes.
It does. Yeah. No, that's fair.
Fish gun.
Do you want to see what I've got?
Go on. Let's
this.
show and then tell.
This to me is one of my favorite guns of all time, largely because of video games,
Yep, I get that.
and it's so good looking.
Specifically the C version.
Specifically the C.
Yeah, it looks weirdly ungainly in its traditional infantry rifle length, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so much higher with the optic as well.
I think I first ran into it with the Rainbow Six games in K form, where it looks a bit cooler because it's slightly it's shorter barrel but the same length forend. And I didn't come across this until a bit later. Certainly not in a game.
Well, the first memory I have of this is the game Black.
I was going to say
That was the sort of gun nerd game of that
Actually,
era.
do you know that made an impression on me just seeing the promotional stuff for Black and never actually getting to play it. I associate that with Black more than anything else.
Well,
Probably.
I can remember. Dave Lawfear. I went in to have my appendix out when I was younger, and
Hopefully not with one of these.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't shot out with 5.56. Thankfully, so I do have a big scar. Weirdly enough, it's a bit bigger than I thought it was, and it's circular. So I remember going into hospital, and I took a copy of Official Xbox magazine in with me while I was recovering, and it had a front cover spread of Black with just the G36 in, and it had the review in there, and the G36 featured throughout the review in the images, and then by the time I was out of hospital while recovering, I'd got the game. I was probably too young to be playing Black at that time, but I remember playing it while recovering, and the G36 just stood out to me. It had like an interesting shape. By that time, I'd played a bunch of first-person shooters, and during that time within the FPS space, it stood out against all the sort of the AK, the sort of M4. It was new, it was different, it was interesting, and it's just stuck with me. It was the first airsoft weapon I ever had. It was a very low quality, kind of rubbish like BB gun. But ever since then, every time a G36C has featured in a game, I've wanted to use it, and it's weirdly not always the most effective gun. It usually sits somewhere in the middle, but it's one of those weapons that I personally want to use in games just because it looks cool, just because I think it's a sexy weapon.
Well, clearly lots of people agree with you because it started cropping up again. The C model specifically started cropping up in all sorts. Doctor Who even unit suddenly started using G36s.
I remember that.
Because there's just something. I think your producers, directors troll up and down the racks at Bapti or whoever's doing the gig, and they see this cool, squat, black, modern-looking weapon, and they go, "Yep, that's my assault rifle for whatever I'm working on." So it crops up in tons of stuff.
Even recently, it was in Stalker 2, because I remember having to give it a yank because it was jammed, and getting to see it from every angle.
And even the bad press that it got in Germany, the infantry rifle version specifically, doesn't seem to have made an impact on its pop culture existence.
And I think
Why
whenever
would it, I guess?
whenever a game features this sort of shape specifically of the railed carry handle with a gap here,
Yep.
people also start to think G36 or
Yep.
G36C.
Yeah. Well, in a way, we've chosen some quite similar things. They're both
5.56.
5.56, both the same sort of overall length. Obviously, the F2000 is a bullpup, so it gets a much longer barrel relative to the little stumpy one on the C. But they really are, they'd be in the same category in a game for sure.
Yeah.
So that's another weird coincidence. But so I've chosen this because it's kind of a red herring. It's people look at it and they think Halo.
It's a tuna, not a red herring. Tuna gun.
You can tell us which fish you think it resembles most in the comments. But yeah, this I played enough Halo to also think like everyone else did when they saw this. Oh, it's like the assault rifle from Halo. But then when you go down the rabbit hole like we did, and you find out that the guy that created it for Halo, the assault rifle for Halo, claimed ignorance of this.
Yeah.
And if you look at the timeline, it's not impossible that they could have come up with this late into production and swapped the guns out like they did in Half-Life.
It's also not
Half-Life
very
2, but
likely.
as far as we know, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's a weird coincidence that this kind of cool sci-fi aesthetic developed in real life and in a game franchise. So that's why I call it a red herring. It's because it's not. Everyone assumes, I think, most people assume that this was, they obviously saw it gun show footage or whatever, and they adapted it for their game. No, that's an original design. The assault rifle and the battle rifle are original designs.
So I think you're right with Halo, but I think of Battlefield 3 with this
Yes.
because it allowed you to swap out the optic. And all I can remember is I think it's Battlefield 3. The optic was terrible. This optic specifically, the way
Has
the
been
game
said
the way the
about the
game
real
implemented it was rubbish. So you'd always swap it out, and then you'd have this weird shaped weapon where it's just flat on the top with just like a red dot, and then all of a sudden it doesn't look as interesting
Yes.
as it does with the actual optic here.
Doesn't look as interesting, but I think as well as if you remove this handguard as well as this cover and the optic underneath, it changes. You know, I always say this, but the human brain goes off silhouettes. You know, probably from the days of that looks like a lot like a saber-toothed tiger. You know, and it turns out it's a cat, but much closer. You know, there's nothing is lost by you running away from the cat, except maybe your mates, you know, taking the mick. But the human brain goes off the silhouette, and then it worries about the details later. And it's true with, you know, we always would get people saying, well, actually, I think you'll find that's inspired by this. And you go, but is it? Interesting discussions that were had, but it changes it completely. Less interesting, but cooler, I think. A lot of people, me included, think it looks cooler with some sort of optic replacing this on the rail underneath, and this taken off and a little hand stop or something on there instead.
It's quite funny that we both chose weapons that in a video game would largely, I'm thinking of things like Battlefield or even Call of Duty, they'd probably perform very similarly.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
the F2000 I always associate with a higher rate of fire for some reason, I think just because of the way it's been implemented in games.
Probably.
But
It'd be about 700, both of them.
But realistically, it's just aesthetic differences for the video game. Just another option for the player.
Yeah,
They're both
the game
5.56. They're both black. They're both, you know.
Yep.
They have more similarities really than they do differences, I'd say.
They do, and you don't, you know, with a very few exceptions in gaming, how long the model is doesn't really matter. You know, sometimes the games will take account of that and have you bring it up into a high ready or dip the muzzle to account for
I
the
think that's
fact.
a fairly new thing though.
Yeah, and it's mainly cosmetic, I think. I don't think, like, if you need to shoot, it'll just spring up and you can shoot it, I think.
The only one that I can really think of is Escape from Tarkov, where the
Right.
muzzle actually lives in the game space will affect.
I remember being
where
very
you're-
impressed by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get no advantage from the bullpupness of it. It's really just aesthetics. They are very similar.
Very cool guns though.
They're both cool. I mean, this is, as far as we know, this is discontinued. The G36 has had some reinforcement up here and is soldering on. So interesting to see. I mean, this is a bit Chris Vectory in its pop culture success versus to the point where it's not actually made or sold anymore. But it shows up painted white in the Hunger Games.
Oh God, yes.
And
That's a very sci-fi near future thing to do, isn't it? Make a gun look weird, paint it white.
Yeah.
You don't expect guns to look white.
You know. But of course, they were leaning into the how sci-fi it looks and kind of hoping that people don't go, but that's a gun from now.
Well, great choices.
Yeah, I think it's added a little bit of flavour to the discussion.
Yeah, I think we picked a good variety there. There was a nice through line and connective tissue between the weapons that we picked that was quite fun, especially the ones we ended with. But personally, I lean towards my picks, but I can't get away from your pick of like the double barrel shotgun or even the gold plated weapons. Gold plated is video game to me. I know there's historical examples of gold plated weaponry, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind. So I can't fault you for that pick, certainly. And the Half-Life MP5. Maybe you did do. Maybe yours were better actually. I've talked myself into it.
I don't know. I mean, I think it doesn't get more of a video game gun than the Chris Vector. It's the closest thing to a video game gun in real life in many ways. How many people? There can't be that many people who came across it as a real gun before they saw it in a TV series or played it in a game. So all solid choices, I think, and I don't think there are any wrong. There can't really be any wrong answers when we're dealing with stuff that's fictional. It's tempting to try and look at it from a practical point of view, at which point some of my choices are pretty questionable.
Yeah, but we're getting down a whole rabbit hole of practicality then. That you can talk about it could be more practical in one game than another, a survival game.
Yeah, you'd have
A
to look at it
sawn-off
purely from a
shotgun is
real
more
world
practical just for ammo,
perspective.
plentiful.
True. Yeah. Survival. The whole zombie survival thing.
Yeah.
You know, we had a social media thing a while back where some of us were asked what our favorite zombie apocalypse weapons were, and I just went, well, not a gun. And I think people were shocked by that. But if I did have to choose a gun, I think I did say this, the classic side-by-side sawn-off shotgun is, you know.
I would go something like an M14 because of the zombie survival guide and the whole scene of the single shot.
Oh, we could talk about that
Yeah,
for a long
that's
time.
That's another video. Maybe we should let the viewers vote on whose loadout was best, because we'll be here discussing it all day.
It needs to be best and not objectively best.
Yeah,
I think.
best.
So yeah, as Dave said, check out the comment section and tell us what you think were the best choices. I'm sure there are plenty of choices that we didn't think of that you will definitely think of.
Someone's going to say Desert Eagle. That's obviously a very gaming gun.
I nearly did.
If you had a gold-plated one, that's what I would have probably got. Tiger Stripe.
But yes, as well as commenting, please do remember to like and subscribe, and well, check out the usual things: the website, our other social media, proper social media outlets, YouTube, not really social media, at least I think it's not. Discuss that as well in the comments. Check out our 3 real-world museums that you can visit as well, and keep an eye out for any events that might be going on. How about you, Dave? Where can people find you at the moment?
I'm on the internet everywhere at Irregular Dave. You can watch my videos at youtube.com/Irregular Dave. You can watch my live streams at twitch.tv/Irregular Dave. Everywhere, that's I've cornered the market on that username. That's where you'll find me. And any other cool stuff that you and I might be doing, that's where I'll announce it. So keep your eyes peeled.
Nice.
Thanks for watching.